things are changing quite dramatically, in fact, at a frenetic pace for the entire world on the geostrategic plane. Now they are changing dramatically for Russia, for America, for China, for Europe. But as far as we are concerned, in our country, they are also changing rapidly for India. So see all that's happened in the sphere that matters to us. So first of all, the relationship between Russia and America has gotten worse. That we might say, why should we care so much about? Russia in some form or the other, Soviet Union earlier, and America have been at odds for a very long time, right? So let them be, they will deal with each other. We can even say, should we really care for Ukraine? What is Ukraine for us, right? Okay, our AIM-32s get their engines, etc. from Ukraine, but whoever controls Ukraine will control that also in the course of time. So why should India care about Ukraine? All right, I'm not saying yes, but I'm saying you can grant that. Even if you grant that, the other side of the coin of Russia-America tensions, growing Russia-America tension, is the growing Russia-China warmth. It's now much more than warmth. It's almost like a clear alliance. Similarly, you already have a clear alliance between China and Pakistan. In the middle of all this, you now have the latest development, which is that Imran Khan, he was among the few chief executives of important nations that went to Beijing for the Winter Olympic Games. He got invited by Vladimir Putin to come to Russia, which he'll be doing later this month or maybe very early next month. And this will be the first time a Pakistani chief executive would be visiting Moscow, Russia, in more than 20 years. So that's a big change. So you can now see how this geostrategic tourniquet, if I may call it that, is tightening around India. Who does it involve? It involves two of India's oldest, chronic, incorrigible adversaries, that is China and Pakistan. China, if anything, has gotten worse over the past couple of years. All right. So China and Pakistan are there. It also involves India's oldest military ally and partner. That is the Soviet Union or Russia now, its successor state, Russia. Now remember, among all these countries, there are no formal alliances. Between China and Pakistan, there is no formal military alliance. Between China and Russia, there is no formal military alliance. But that doesn't matter so much, because when your interests align, then your formal alliances don't matter. On the opposite end of these powers who are coming together, on the opposite end is the power that's been hostile to India for a very long time, but where India has seen its relationship warm up. So it's not something that I describe as alliance, but both the leaders of India, the Prime Minister of India, in fact, this is the third Prime Minister of India, that is Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Dr. Manmohan Singh and Narendra Modi, and meanwhile also the fourth President of America to say that India and America are strategic allies. In fact, they have now started saying they are essential strategic allies. Now, we can always debate the quality of that alliance on another day, but America, at least from India's point of view, is now seen as a new alliance partner. So these forces, China and Russia, essentially are ranged against America and then America's sort of ward, which is Europe or European Union. So this world is now getting divided into two geostrategically. Now, where does India belong? Also is a debate for another day. Is India a balancing power, or is India a power that will tilt the balance on some side, or will India be better off just fending for itself, for its own interests? Those are complex questions that will come up as we go along. If you see the current situation, the Chinese are refusing to move away from Ladakh. In fact, they might be planning to create trouble, or at least be looking like making trouble in other areas. So they are keeping us on our toes. The Pakistanis, on the other hand, while they might have agreed for a ceasefire for now on the LOC, they are playing their games because they see an open goal vis-a-vis China and Russia. In fact, more Russia than China, because China was always with them. Now that Russia is becoming so dependent on China, and in some ways vice versa between Russia and China, because China uses Russia to balance American power. China uses Russia now to undermine American power. In some ways, that is comparable with the way they have used Pakistan to undermine the Indian power. So Pakistan for China has been a low-cost investment all this while to keep India busy there. Similarly now, China might think, Xi Jinping might think that Russia, Putin, they are a good way to balance the American power. So get the Americans caught up in Europe. Most likely there won't be a war, but if there is, so be it. But America will remain caught up in Europe. So it's also a reminder to America that, look, your soft underbelly is Europe. You are treaty bound under NATO for such a long time to protect all these countries in Europe. If you are today finding it difficult to protect even these countries that you are treaty bound to come to the defense of, why are you imagining going to Indo-Pacific or getting into power struggles in Asia? That is your sphere. Let it be. This is our sphere. Let us be, right? Otherwise, deal with Russia. In Europe, that's precisely they tell us in the subcontinent. They said, look, you let us be, we are the Chinese, you be good boys and sign on the dotted line, or you meanwhile deal with the Pakistanis, and we'll see as and when you grow in stature and strength to fight us. So that is how the dice is now loaded at this point of time. Now, we have a very good reading today on the print, and I would comment very strongly that you read it. It's an article by Professor Rajesh Rajgopalan, who is a professor of international politics at JNU, not very far from my home in Delhi. Now, he uses an expression which I wish was mine, but I am very happy to borrow wisdom and a good line from my own columnist. So thank you, Professor Rajgopalan. He says that does India really want, because the question is, how will India navigate this new reality? So he asks a question. The question is, does India want to live in a China-dominated Asian order? The answer obviously will be no. At least my answer is no. I suspect the answer from almost all of you will be no. Who wants to live in a China-dominated Asian order? Doesn't look like any country might want that except Pakistan, and Pakistan also for other reasons, for the reasons that they think it spites India, right? No country in Asia would want a China-dominated Asian order. They may not all say so, but India right now has a bigger, more direct and a more clear and present threat from China. So he then goes on to say that, look, it is in view of this that we in India have to review our sentimentality, old nostalgia about Russia. And I will give you some examples in terms of what's happened with Russia. First of all, the crowning example is the invitation now to Imran Khan. And we've seen the Russian envoy to Afghanistan actually in many ways giving precedence to the Pakistani concerns over Indian concerns in Afghanistan, sometimes also holding conferences with the Pakistanis and others, excluding India. Russian Minister Lavrov has come to India and criticized the idea of the Quad in public. Russians in any case make no secret of their contempt for the Quad, in spite of the fact that they know how important Quad is for strategic reasons for India, or at least how important India sees it to be. They can always counsel India in private that, look, don't trust the Americans, this is useless, Quad will do nothing for you. But for them to do it public tells you where their mind is. So in that situation, and that is when we see the rise of an anti-Quad. Please see our 50-word edit that we wrote today. What's happening is Pakistan is only the new entrant, but Russia, China, and now add Pakistan from outside, and who knows if the American-Iranian question is not settled or does not move towards resolution, Iran may become a part of it, and Turkey, although it's a member of NATO, but Turkey under Erdogan can play both sides against the third. So we don't know what Turkey will do. In this situation, we have the makings of an anti-Quad, because China, Russia are setting up a kind of anti-Quad, right? A lot of the discourse from China also is that Quad is a bad, destabilizing idea. You are politicizing the Indian Ocean. Now, how much does Pakistan matter? It doesn't matter so much in the big picture. Globally, it matters for nothing. But it's a bit like, in old days, I don't know what happens these days. In old days, there used to be marketing schemes like if you buy a big packet, a big box of surf detergent, you might get one cake of Lux soap free or something like that. So Pakistan in this case is that Lux ki tikki, right? So while the big powers get together, that's Russia and China, Pakistan comes along as a freebie, but it is still a benefit to the customer whose interests are contrary to India's. Because what are India's interests right now? And Professor Rajgopal also explains it very well, in fact, much better than I will be able to do now. So please read his article and also listen to the podcast of his article. Now we do podcasts on all our key articles. Please listen to that also. So he says that at this point for India, the China-Russia-America relationship is a zero-sum game. So anything that enhances China's power in Asia weakens America's power. Anything that weakens America's power works to the detriment of India. Anything that enhances China's power works to the detriment of India. So that is the zero-sum game. India cannot see China becoming stronger right now because that runs completely contrary to India's interests. And then he goes on to say and explain very well that whatever strengthens the China-Russia bond weakens America. When that happens, India again loses. So the strengthening of the China-Russia bond also is contrary to India's interests. And now they've thrown Pakistan in the mix as well, once again to tell India that, listen, you are trying to play games with big powers. You first deal with a chota fellow, right? You can't even deal with the Pakistanis. You are now getting apoplectic just because the Pakistanis are coming closer to us and Imran Khan is coming to Moscow. How will you deal with China? How will you deal with Russia? So know your place. You are a minor power. Know your place, and then we might find some consideration for you. Now again, I'll borrow wisdom from Professor Rajgopal to try and explain the scenario to you. So there is a bunch of sort of liberal Americans. There is a strong liberal constituency that is anti-war, anti-tensions, anti-stress. They want Joe Biden to find a way to avoid conflict over Ukraine with Russia. So the argument there seems to be, look, Russia is a big power. They've gotten used to being a superpower, Soviet Union. The Soviet Union is not there, but all its military strength sits in a much smaller and more manageable Russia. So they also deserve a sphere of influence around them, right? So America should allow Russia to have its own sphere of influence, right? To use one of the lines that Gandhi often used, an area where they can also enjoy their glow of freedom, in this case their glow of dominance or dadagiri. So thoda sa unke liye chhod do. But if you do that, then first of all there is no guarantee that Russia will remain there, because that will make Putin and Russia think that, look, now that we've been given so much space, we can push at the others, and this will make many other states very insecure. For example, the Baltics. Finland and Sweden are already getting neurotic and maybe on the verge of considering joining NATO sometimes. Although they've been neutral, at least they've had the facade of being reasonably neutral all this while. But they will also begin to worry, because it can open the doors for Putin's Russia again to create a sphere, a much larger sphere of influence in Europe that the Western powers and the Americans will not want. But again, if this is allowed, Professor Rajgopalan says it's the same American liberals who are also cool with the idea of China being allowed its own sphere of influence in Asia. Does that work for India? Because a lot of the time, the liberal constituency in India tends to instinctively align with the Western liberal constituency, particularly the American one. But in this case, what the American pacifist liberal constituency wants Biden to do in Europe is also something they might want Biden to do in Asia. That is, look, make space for others. This is a large enough universe, it's a large enough world. There can be three powers there. America is its own power, Russia has its own power, China has its own power. Let each one have their sphere of influence. So you carve up the world like that. So each country, instead of someone like America, a country like America, which in the past created the Monroe Doctrine, whereby they were to keep their preeminence sort of in the Americas, right? In this country, America would give a Monroe Doctrine to Russia and to China. Now, Russian influence rising in Europe may not bother us in India so much, but giving the same kind of leeway to China, which will automatically follow. Strengthening of Russia at this point vis-a-vis the Western powers automatically strengthens China and weakens the Western powers, particularly America. So see how that matters for India. That is a very important equation that we have to think about. Now, life for everybody would have been much easier for everybody except maybe China and Russia if Europe was capable of defending itself. Europe is very rich. Europe is at least 11 to 12 times as large as Russia in terms of the economy. Overall, Russian comprehensive national power comes more from the military and nuclear weapons and some from energy. It does not come so much from its economy. Russia's economy, in fact, at this point, overall economy, although it's a much smaller population, is much smaller than India as well. The economy is much smaller than India as well. So it's a fraction of what Europe's combined economic strength is. But what Europe doesn't have is, Europe cannot put up a credible military to last out even 1 or 2 days facing the great Russian military machine, which did become weak after the breakdown of the Soviet Union, but which has been strengthened greatly. And also, unlike all European leaders and European powers, Putin has shown the inclination to use military power, to employ military power to achieve his larger political, diplomatic, strategic and tactical objectives, even if it involves casualties. So his is a more warlike military than most others right now, and definitely enormously more warlike than that of the rest of Europe. And that's where America gets caught, because they have to protect not just Ukraine. Ukraine right now is a proxy for Europe, because if they dump Ukraine, that will spread a great deal of fear in the rest of Europe. Now, in this situation, you see how various countries are signaling. Russia, for example, has not just invited Imran Khan to Moscow. They know the significance of that step and they know how that will be seen in India. But at the same time, a couple of other things have happened. The Hindu, respected, venerable paper like The Hindu, in one of its internet quizzes, asked which place was invaded recently by Russia. And the choices including Crimea or Crimea, however you pronounce it, right? Now, everybody knows that in 2014, Russians moved in, they walked in and they annexed Crimea. They may not have been fighting for it, it may have been done bloodlessly, but they moved in and they annexed Crimea. So what did the Russians do? Usually, you would expect Russian embassies to be quite respectful of Indian media, particularly The Hindu. But they hit back saying, so The Hindu, where did you see this invasion? The Hindu, in fact, deleted that question. Now, we haven't seen the Russian embassy in Delhi behave like that. Then a TV channel. Now, first of all TV channels, all media people should be free to do what they are doing. So I will give my principled view. But this is a Russian organization. This is owned by Russia Today. So this is state-controlled media. Russians are now saying this is not state-controlled. But you know what? This is Putin's Russia, right? If they claim that something that one of their organizations owns is autonomous, particularly if it's a media organization and can do what it wishes, you have to be very gullible to believe it. Now, that channel was given the permission to go to Kashmir. That's denied to all international media organizations. So frankly, if you could give them the clearance, you should also give CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, everybody the clearance. That clearance was only given, I can presume, because they were a Russian organization. Now they've gone and produced something which is not at all any different from what CNN or BBC or Al Jazeera might have said. They said India is building a settler colonial state in Kashmir, etc., etc., etc. And Russian embassy now has issued a clarification saying, first of all, this is not state-owned media. Second, our official position on Kashmir remains the same. Third, this is an independent media organization. They can report things as they see. Now we know that that's a very touching explanation, and that is Moscow really speaking up for free media. But we'd like to see a bit more of that free media in Russia itself. So if you look at all of these, you can see that these are signals. Russia knows India's vulnerabilities. Russia also knows the extent to which India militarily depends on Russia. So at this point, when Russia is so closely aligned with China, nations act in their self-interest, and big powers only act cynically in their self-interest. They are quite happy to dump their allies also as and when it suits them. That is all proven by history. So Russia at this moment, at this point in history, has pitched its fate with China. India's relationship with China at this point would be comparable with the way it was, say, in the late 50s, 1957, 8, 9, when tension and trouble was building up on the borders. The China-Pakistan warmth is the way it's been all this while. If anything, it's now become more vocal and more substantive because of the large Chinese presence with CPEC. Pakistan and Russia's warming up to each other, it's beginning to look a little bit like the post-Tashkent era in 1966, 67, 68. Remember, 1966 is when China started selling arms, military hardware to Pakistan. 1968, Russia also began selling some military hardware, not too much, but some military hardware to Pakistan, and also counseling India and Pakistan to bury their differences and arrive at some sort of a settlement between themselves. So several wheels of time have turned full circle, and right now they are where it does not suit India at all. But the only good thing about wheels is that they keep turning. They don't become stationary. And what a power like India can do is try and use whatever influence, whatever its skills it has, either to change the direction of the wheels, and if that's not possible, at least to slow down the movement if it's not in the direction that India wants it to be.